Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. Luke chapter 21 verse 10. These commotions, like distant thunder that forebodes the approaching storm, were so frequent from the death of our Lord until the destruction of Jerusalem that whole interval might, with propriety, be appealed to in illustration of this prophecy. 150 of the copious pages of Josephus, which contain the history of this period, are everywhere stained with blood. To particularize in a few instances, about 3 years after the death of Christ, a war broke out between Herod and Aretas, king of Arabia Petraea, in which the army of the former was cut off. This was kingdom rising against kingdom. Wars are usually preceded by rumors. It may, therefore, appear absurd to attempt a distinct elucidation of this part of the prophecy. Nevertheless, it ought not to be omitted that about this time, the Emperor Caligula, having ordered his statue to be placed in the Temple of Jerusalem, and the Jews having persisted to refuse him, the whole nation was so much alarmed by the mere apprehension of war that they neglected even to till their lands. The storm, however, blew over. About this period, a great number of Jews, on account of a pestilence which raged at Babylon, removed from that city to Seleucia, where the Greeks and Syrians rose against them and destroyed of this devoted people more than 5 myriads. The extent of this slaughter, says Josephus, had no parallel in any former period of their history. Again, about 5 years after this dreadful massacre, there happened a severe contest between the Jews at Perea and the Philadelphians respecting the limits of a city called Myra, in which many of the former were slain. This was nation rising up against nation. 4 years afterwards, under Cumanus, an indignity was offered to the Jews within the precincts of the temple by a Roman soldier, which they violently resented. But upon the approach of the Romans in great force, their terror was so excessive, and so disorderly and precipitate was their flight, that not less than 10,000 Jews were trodden to death in the streets. This again was nation rising up against nation. 4 years more had not elapsed before the Jews made war against the Samaritans and ravaged their country. The people of Samaria had murdered a Galilean who was going up to Jerusalem to keep the Passover, and the Jews thus revenged it. At Caesarea, the Jews having had a sharp contention with the Syrians for the government of the city, an appeal was made to Rome, who decreed it to the Syrians. This event laid the foundation of a most cruel and sanguinary contest between the two nations. The Jews, mortified by disappointment and inflamed by jealousy, rose against the Syrians, who successfully repelled them. In the city of Caesarea, alone upwards of 20,000 Jews were slain. The flame, however, was not now quenched. It spread its destructive rage wherever the Jew and Syrians dwelt together in the same place. Throughout every city, town and village, mutual animosity and slaughter prevailed. At Damascus, Tyre, Ascalon, Gadara and Scythopolis, the carnage was dreadful. At the first of these cities, 10,000 Jews were slain in 1 hour, and at Scythopolis 13,000 treacherously in 1 night. At Alexandria, the Jews, aggrieved by the oppressions of the Romans, rose against them, but the Romans, gaining the ascendancy, slew of that nation 50,000 persons, sparing neither infants nor the aged. And after this, at the siege of Jopata, not less than 40,000 Jews perished. While these destructive contests prevailed in the east, the western parts of the Roman Empire were rent by the fierce contentions of Galba, Otho, and Vertellis, of which 3 emperors. It is remarkable that they all, together with Nero, their immediate predecessor, died a violent death within the short space of 18 months. Finally, the whole nation of the Jews took up arms against the Romans, King Agrippa, and provoked that dreadful war which, in a few years, deluged Judea in blood and laid its capital in ruins. If it be here objected that, because wars occur so frequently, it would be improper to attribute to supernatural foresight a successful prediction respecting them, it is replied that much of this objection will be removed by considering the incompetency of even statesmen themselves to foretell the condition, only for a few years, of the very nation whose affairs they administer. Let it be considered that the wars to which this part of our Lord's prophecy referred were to be of two kinds, and that the event corresponded accordingly, that they occurred within the period to which he had assigned them, that they fell with the most destructive severity on the Jews, to whom the prophecy at large chiefly related, and that the person who predicted them was not in the condition of a statesman, but in that of a carpenter's son.